All right, anyway, hey, would you like to introduce Larry for me while I continue to fix this?
Of course. Yeah, I'm so pleased, thank you Larry, to introduce Larry Oetker, who is the Executive Director of the Humboldt Bay Harbor Recreation and Conservation District. The Harbor District manages the development of the Humboldt Bay below the high tide line, as well as protecting the natural resources here and other areas as well. And as many of you know, Larry was a long time director of community development for the city of Arcata, and I really appreciated getting to know Larry many years ago. He actually served on the Friends of the Dunes board of directors, and he's a nearby neighbor and fellow person who lives right on the shores of Humboldt Bay and really appreciates it. So please welcome Larry Oetker.
So yeah, I've been the executive director of the Harbor District now for about a year, a little less than a year now, and so that we have a lot that we have going on, and we're trying to basically revitalize the port and make it ready for development, but at the same time attract businesses that meet the community's desires to have the type of businesses that we want, that are clean, that are good for the bay, you know, that really work with the environment and other kinds of things. And so that's kind of what I'm all about. Economic development, that's my passion, that's what I do, that's what I love. I love helping businesses. I want them to succeed and to create the environment so that we can make it happen. And so the bottom line is, I constantly hear how bad Humboldt County is, how we can never do anything, how we're the worst, you know, our kids are all moving away. I'm here to tell you that we're open for business. This is the right time, the right place. Humboldt Bay is amazing. And we're going to have economic revitalization that'll be at the scale of Humboldt, not a boom and bust type of environment, slow and steady. That's what we're looking for. And so I'm just going to kind of go through these just really quick. The entrance to the bay, you know, is 48 feet, 38 feet in the main channels. We go down to 26 feet down to Fields Landing. You know, we have all these different shipping terminals, but the problem is we need to create a 21st century port. What I mean by that is all of our docks are basically wood. They were designed for the wood chips or logs going out. They're rotting, they're deteriorating, they're falling apart. We need to do some serious reinvestment in our port infrastructure if we're going to maintain our dock facilities. Cruise ships. We had our first cruise ship in a while that was here in May. We've got another one confirmed for next year. We're working with Eureka and the county primarily to kind of attract cruise ships to come in. It's just one of the things to get more numbers of ships to come into the port. So what this is basically the pulp mill. When we took over the old pulp mill, there was no jobs. It was totally shut down. Now we have 18 tenants. There's 64 living wage jobs that we have out there, another 24 part-time jobs. It's bringing in $650,000 of income to the Harbor District. We put a 730,000 kilowatt PV system, and right now it's the biggest one in Humboldt County. It supplies all the electricity for every Harbor District meter from our Fields Landing, Woodley Island, and here. So we're probably at about 60–80% full. This is the pulp mill. What we'd like to do is kind of a marine research and innovation center where we're looking at public cargo docks and other types of things. Energy, we think there's lots of energy infrastructure out there. You know, there's this big building that you see out there. That's basically a 17-story building that's out there. We would love to get that revitalized. One of the things, I'm just going to sidetrack a little bit. You may know there's a fiber optic line that's going down 299, that all the right-of-way and everything. Well, we have an exclusive right to negotiate with another firm that wants to put in fiber optic lines from Asia. And what will happen is they will land basically at the pulp mill. And so they probably put between 4 and 6 new fiber optic lines that will be a direct connection to Asia and come right to the old pulp mill, and then it will directly go out to the new fiber optic lines that are going out 299. This is a great opportunity for us with tech and other industries, because we always say that we need redundancy and all these other things. This is a true direct connection from Asia right there, right at the hub. So the offshore wind energy, basically the Bureau of Offshore Energy Management, I think it was last Friday, they released basically leases And there's only 2 of them in the whole West Coast that they released. One of them is off the shore of Humboldt Bay, so they're basically looking for comments and lease proposals. The Rotary Coast Energy Authority submitted a proposal along with Principal Power to do new offshore wind energy that would go 30 miles offshore.
No.
And so here's what we're talking about, is creating port infrastructure in Humboldt Bay. Humboldt Bay is uniquely situated. There was studies that were done through the whole United States, and Humboldt Bay is the primary location for a whole host of reasons. One of them is there's no bridges. These things, when they go out the port, are so large you couldn't get them underneath the Golden Gate Bridge. You go to Coos Bay, you go to all the other bays, Humboldt Bay is uniquely situated for the wind energy development in the entire West Coast. And so, you know, offshore wind energy, there's 14,000 direct job potentials. This is a huge thing that's going in. In addition to some of the onshore wind development, this is what they're talking about, what went out of Portugal. On the top of that thing, just to give you a scale, that's like the size of a helipad that would fit right on the very, very top of this. When you look at the wingspans, just one wing is like a 747 jet, just one of the wings. That's how big these are. And so you can't just take these out of any port. So when they do those, they're entirely floating because we're in deep water. It's really deep out there. You can't use the oil platform places, and so it's uniquely situated for Humboldt Bay. What we want to do is to try to get offshore wind and then to have an assembly and an installation area in Humboldt. And then what we would be able to do is we'd be the hub, highly trained workforce that would be able to go to all offshore wind energy, whether it's Morro Bay, Coos Bay, other places, as it begins to develop off of the West Coast. This would be the hub where the assembly would go, and they would bring them in and out of Humboldt, and then they would barge them to the locations. And when they need repaired, the trained workforce would be here, and they would go out to those locations. In New Bedford, Massachusetts, they just built a new one off of Nantucket. They just did offshore wind. They just built a whole new wind energy terminal to supply the wind energy. It's the only one on the East Coast, and we want to be the one on the West Coast, and we're strategically staged to do that right now. So marine research, we want to basically make this into a research facility with classrooms, labs, and other kinds of things that we'd like to do at the Small Peninsula. Again, there's over 1,000 acres of undeveloped land that are out there that were formerly industrial. There's plenty of space out there to do these things. Aquaculture. So with aquaculture, we've been doing a lot of work with aquaculture. And so basically we established this, what we call a pre-permitting program. I used to run the planning department in Arcata. I worked with a lot of you guys, and you guys thought that it was hard to get a permit in Arcata. Try to get a permit in the middle of the bay to do an edible research. It's almost impossible. It's extremely, extremely difficult to do. You're a small person, they tell you got to get permits, it's a couple $100,000, and we might give you a permit at the end. You just can't pull it off if you're a small independent business. So basically the traditional process is the shellfish grower would go to all these different agencies and ask them to get a permit, right? Basically what we did is we completely reversed it, and we said, okay, what if the Harbor District got all the permits, and then the shellfish grower just had to go to the Harbor District, right? What a concept. What if we went through all of the obstacles and got all the permission from everybody, and then all they had to do is submit a report to us, and then we could issue the report. So that's what we did. So basically, we broke it into 2 phases, and now we have these 3 areas that are off of the Small Peninsula, which is 21 acres, and they can do these flupsies and longlines in those acres, in those areas right now. So we currently have 2 leases, and again, one of the leases, so what do these look like? This is what they look like on the inside of the docks. You can still have shipping. This is right off of the pulp mill right now. That's what's out there right now on the inside of the dock, between the dock and the shore. And so these are highly skilled HSU graduates. These are jobs that you have to know chemistry, you have to know biology. These are really tough and good jobs for people. A lot of infrastructure. And so we have basically room pre-permitted for about 6 of these operations. The board just approved the second lease for these to Coast Seafood, which is going to bring in another $45,000 a year into the Harbor District. We need the revenue in order to support these things. So then the second is to do the exact same thing, but to do it in basically Arcata Bay in the traditional, what everybody thinks of as the oysters. And so we've got an environmental impact report that we're just about ready to circulate right now, where we'll be releasing those, and those will be 5 areas, and I think we've been working with approximately 20 different businesses, shellfish growers, to basically expand into our Arcata Bay and to do very, very limited oyster. All of these are strategically designed so they're not in any eelgrass beds, they're all away from it. These are basically the best locations that you can get to. Of course, there's opposition, there's always opposition, there's no perfect sites. So the next thing, what we're looking with aquaculture is basically upland aquaculture. You know, this is basically where you're doing it on land. And so within the pulp mill itself, we already have, there's a hagfish operation that we have. They go out and they get hagfish off the coast. They're basically a slime eel is what they are. And then they have to leave them here for 5 days, and then they ship them over to Asia, you know, as a high-end market. That's been going on now for probably about 5 years. It's a fairly big operation. So we already have Taylor Seafood, the ones that have their operation there, and Coast Seafoods has their. We've been looking at a variety of different places, and so then what do we have is that we have an ocean outfall. Basically, when the pulp mill was built, the 4-foot diameter pipe goes 1.5 miles. We take all of the DG Fairhaven's basically hot water that they have, and it goes out the line. We have a permit that says from the State Lands Commission that says we can do aquaculture discharge out of there. Basically, when the new wastewater treatment plant that'll go in for the town of Samoa, the Coastal Commission and the Water Board all want to use our ocean outfall. So with this ocean outfall, like I said, the State Lands Commission, it specifically says we can use it for aquaculture discharge. Talked to the Water Quality Control Board, and we're currently applying for a permit for 4 50,000 square foot land-based aquaculture operations on the Samoa Peninsula. We went in and we drilled a saltwater well on the Samoa Peninsula. So at the pulp mill, we went down 300 feet, got in below the freshwater and into the saltwater lens. Basically with aquaculture, what happens is that when the storms get in and pollution and the wastewater treatment plants and all those things, they have closures. But if you were able to draw your water from the saltwater below the ground, there would be no disruptions. You'd have a stable, clear supply of water. In addition to that, we have a never-ending supply of fresh water, you know, from the Mad River through the process. And then lastly is that we applied to the county to basically get all the coastal development permits to clear it. And currently we had a 50,000 square foot aquaculture operation that we had an intent to lease. They backed out at the last minute. I'm currently working with another firm to do aquaculture on the Samoa Peninsula. And so what we're trying to do is, the bottom line is this, is the port's infrastructure is rapidly deteriorating. Rapidly deteriorating. The Harbor District has a fireboat. Just within the last year, Woody's Dock down in Fields Landing caught on fire. How many fires have we seen on our coast that these buildings are catching on fire, they're deteriorating, they're falling apart? If we don't give the property owners the opportunity to get some tenants in those locations, they have absolutely no money to reinvest into the infrastructure. It's extremely expensive to maintain this infrastructure. The first step is we have to get some uses on these properties in order to allow at least maintenance level investment so that we can attract new businesses to come to our area. The second, in my opinion, is that on the Samoa Peninsula in particular, the biggest thing right now is that everybody says we need to attract development to the Samoa Peninsula. Okay, there's no wastewater on the Samoa Peninsula. There's no treatment, there's no anything. Everything has to go into the leach field, right? Basically a septic system. Industrial is absolutely the worst to do for a septic system because there's potential contamination and other kinds of things. The Water Board has put a moratorium on all new septic systems on the Samoa Peninsula. In effect, what it means is that even if I had a new company that came here and they wanted to build a wind turbine and they didn't even want to build a building, I still have to have bathrooms to support those employees. If you're going to do anything on the Samoa Peninsula, I don't care where you're at, you have to have restrooms. You have to. So right now, what is happening is the town of Samoa has an approved wastewater treatment plant with the Coastal Commission. It's already approved with the town of Samoa. The Water Board is doing an environmental impact report right now for the Fairhaven, the town of Fairhaven, and that they're proposed to give them a grant to get them off of the septic system. Worked with the Coastal Commission and the Water Quality Control Board to basically say, why do we want 2 wastewater treatment plants on the Samoa Peninsula? Why not 1 wastewater treatment plant? And then put a line all the way from Fairhaven down the middle of the Samoa Peninsula and have the treatment plant at the town of Samoa where Danco is building theirs. What that would mean is we would have wastewater services through the entire Samoa Peninsula, right down the middle of all that industrial land that's sitting vacant right now. We already have huge water supply that goes all the way down the line. And so the 2 main factors for why we're not developing in the Samoa Peninsula is 2 things. Number 1, we don't have the wastewater. Number 2, the county's zoning is atrocious. It's just atrocious. It's not the Coastal Commission. It is the county's zoning is atrocious and is job killing and has been for at least as long as they did it. Just as an example and in conclusion on how bad it is out there, is that if you have a principally permitted use, normally that means that you just say, hey, okay, do I comply with the rules, and then I move on. On the Samoa Peninsula is that there's no such thing as principally permitted. It says principally permitted, but you still require a hearing for everything. And so it has to go to the Planning Commission. That means 2 to 4 months for every use that wants to move into the Samoa Peninsula, every use. So last week we had a hearing before the Planning Commission where we're trying to get pre-approved for some uses so we can really streamline the process and get some businesses going. Anyway, I want to end it there. I'm extremely optimistic. There's a lot of work that has to be done. We could do this, but it's going to take us all working together. And I just really thank you for the opportunity, and I'm available if you have any questions, or give me a call anytime you want to. I love this community, and I want to see it succeed so that my kids and your kids and we all can be successful. Thank you very much.
We should give a chance for a couple questions, because I know there's got to be a couple out there. I see a hand for sure.
For Larry, for wastewater, what's the relative elevation of the new plants relative to predicted sea level rise? How are we addressing that on the peninsula?
Glad you said that. Hey, I have dredge material. One thing I didn't say is dredge. Dredge is basically, with the town of Samoa, they're required to raise it 3 feet above the 100-year sea level rise, plus an additional 3 feet above the 2100's projected sea level rise for any potential tsunami. So it will be raised about 7 feet, and that's where I want to put my dredge material. Any other questions?
I have a question. You know, I know that they're getting a new services district down in Fairhaven, but has there been some talk about expanding the Manila wastewater treatment to help reach some other places down in Samoa? I mean, I think that has been in the past. Is that, in your opinion, still something that should be explored, or is that ship gone?
I think they explored that in the beginning, because there is a brand new, basically the fire district, they had a vote, I think it was last year, and they formed a community service district. And so now what used to be the fire protection district is going to be a community service district, and they're the ones that are going to be running the wastewater treatment plant. I think that they've given up that idea that there would be one for Manila and Samoa, and now they're just moving forward with building one for the Samoa Peninsula. Kim?
Yeah, are there any plans to deal with that break that's there on the corner before you enter the Jaws go out? You know where I'm talking about there?
In the
just south of the Coast Guard, where it's breaking on the corner there, and there's a lot of swell running through there, right through the channel.
unofficially, been working with the with the Army Corps of Engineers. I believe I know what you're talking about. So with the Army Corps of Engineers, our jetties, what's one of the most prominent features in Humboldt besides the redwoods? The jetties. A lot of people go out to the jetty. It's a beautiful place. But geez, you try to walk out there, it's all eroded and everything. The Army Corps is slated to basically, I believe it's 10 or 20 million in the next couple of years to basically do jetty repairs, redo the jetties. We want to look at the jetties to see if we can slightly change them so we don't have to dredge as much and other kinds of things. And so that in the next couple of years, I think there's going to be some work on the jetties to basically do some much needed maintenance, but also to look at some ways that they need to be slightly modified because there's a lot of energy out there that needs to be adjusted a little bit. Maybe, I guess, when my old boss gets my last one. It's kind of a scary thing.
You have to be more enthusiastic, though.
So the Army Corps dredges the channels, correct? So what's the district's plan to dredge inside? Because I know the district had its own dredge at some point. Are you still have your own dredge, or are you going to contract that? Or
Well, you got a couple of options. No, the short answer is when I came on board and it's not just me, is that in the last couple of months, really concentrate on working with all the different agencies, Army Corps, Water Quality Control Board, EPA, and we got permits. And so I got the permits to dredge Woodley Island and Fields Landing Boatyard in the last couple of months. We went out to bid, and unfortunately, we got into contract hell. The contracts protested the vote. We went out to bid a second time. The contracts got protested again, and so we weren't able to dredge this particular year. And so I want to fire up our dredge that we own. But right now, we can't get the permits because of longfin smelt. But we just 2 weeks ago, we purchased a piece of property in King Salmon, and we're going to be mitigating for eelgrass and longfin smelts on those areas, and that should be able to get us the permit. When I say we got a permit, I didn't apply for a 1-year permit. I applied for a 10-year permit, and so I got a 10-year permit so that we have a permit so that we can dredge for the next 10 years consistently, but I need to modify it to use the cutter head suction dredge.
Well, thank you. We've made a donation to the Wheelchair Foundation in your name.
Oh, thank you.
So thank you for speaking.